Welcome everyone to our session on supported standing for children with cerebral palsy, otherwise known as Stand Up for Participation and Function. My name is Lynore McLean. I'm a physical therapist and I work on the positioning mobility team at Sunny Hill Health Center in Vancouver, BC. We're part of a provincial services that provides seating mobility for children around the province. And I have my colleague here.
I just want to say that we had that name first.
Oh, there was another session during the conference also named Stand Up for Participation, which I think is actually a really great because we should be standing up to participate. So there you go. Okay, Ginny, you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ginny.
This is Ginny Paleg.
And that's Roz.
And then I'd also like to draw your attention to the very small little video in the top right corner of your screen, or left corner. Roz? Who are you?
Hi, I'm Roslyn Livingstone, and I'm an occupational therapist based in British Columbia, Canada.
Well,
So
it's
it's
waiting
7:15 in the
you.
morning here.
So just a little bit of business. Roslyn and myself, we have no conflicts to declare. Ginny is a paid education consultant for Prime Engineering. She received no support for the publication on which this presentation is based and claims no bias. Prime Engineering did cover some expenses for Ginny to attend this seating symposium. We wanted to make a note that all of the private photos and videos used within the presentation are with permission from legal guardian. However, we ask you not to take screenshots because the permission that was granted was in the context of a live presentation and not for distribution. And then any of the cartoons that you see were created with Clip to Comic and Canva. So our learning objectives are as printed in the abstract. So the content of this presentation is based on a recent publication called Supported Standing Interventions for Children and Young Adults with Non-Ambulant Cerebral Palsy, a scoping review, and I've provided a QR code for you here. I'll also have it up at the end of the presentation. This is an online version of the article, which you can read but not download. If you want any of the tables or supplementary data, please feel free to contact us, and I'd be happy to forward those to you. So through our work in assistive technology, seating mobility, and early intervention, all three of us have followed the evidence for supported standing for children with cerebral palsy. There is a lot of qualitative and quantitative research and numerous systematic reviews, but there was nothing that evaluated and synthesized all of this research in one place. The goal of our research and in writing this paper was to do just that, to pull everything together in the most rigorous and thorough means possible. Our initial search of 8 electronic databases and 2 registers resulted in 808 records. Ultimately, we included 59 citations, which was 16 systematic reviews, 17 intervention studies, which were reported over 18 citations, 8 analytical cross-section studies, 5 descriptive cross-sectional survey studies, 5 qualitative studies, 1 mixed method studies, and 6 clinical guidelines. There was a lot of reading. Some people got into sourdough during COVID. We got into reading articles. Our focus for this paper was on the evidence for supported standing for children with cerebral palsy, GMFCS levels 4 and 5. So let me just remind you that cerebral palsy is a non-degenerative, lifelong sensory motor impairment resulting from the damage in the neonatal or early childhood period before, during, or shortly after birth. This does also include the weird and wonderful genetic and metabolic conditions, for example, Angelman's, Cornelia de Lange, Cri du Chat, et cetera, et cetera. Secondly, GMFCS stands for Gross Motor Function Classification System, and this is a 5-level classification system that differentiates children with cerebral palsy based on their current gross motor abilities, limitations in gross motor function, and the need for assistive technology and wheeled mobility. Children classified as GMFCS level 4 may use power and manual mobility, may use a supported walker and a supported stander. Children classified as GMFCS level 5 may use all of the same technology as the children in GMFCS level 4, but they will require more extensive adaptations for support as they have more significant limited ability to maintain anti-gravity head and trunk postures. So basically, we were focusing on those kids that are more involved. So back to our eligibility criteria. In the studies that we looked at, they had to have 80% of the participants as classified as GMFCS 4 and 5. The study had to include supported standing as an intervention, and in some studies, this was the control. Standing was defined as being in an upright position within 30 degrees of vertical in any orientation, and hips and knees had to be less than 40 degrees of flexion. So, and we considered all types of studies for inclusion. Our data extraction and evaluation process followed the PRISMA statement for systematic reviews. And while we used a systematic review methodology, it was classified as a scoping review due to the number of outcomes that we considered and that we used both primary and secondary evidence together. So as I mentioned before, so much has been written and we really wanted to pull it all together. So the systematic reviews to date have all had the same message, and that is that the quality of the evidence is low and insufficient to make firm conclusions. So it's not particularly helpful for clinicians. So we aim to combine and draw out studies that were included in these systematic reviews, how they relate to each other, and we also strive to synthesize and present the data in a clinically relevant way. So both the quantitative evidence was evaluated for quality and risk of bias. And then the qualitative and descriptive data was analyzed by coding themes and then sort of distilling them down to some key themes, which we'll get into later. So often when I think about the research for children with cerebral palsy, I feel like the studies really don't have a lot of kids in there and you wonder how can it all be generalized? So I just wanted to highlight how many kids were involved in all of these 59 citations that we reviewed. So if you look under the primary research, there were 499 children that are included in those. In the qualitative research, we have 17, and in our cross-sectional and survey studies, there were 585 kids. So we're looking at a total of over 1,000 children whose data, input, experience, assessment was included in all of these studies. So that's a lot of kids. So before we go any further into the data, I wanted to share a success story with you. I'd like to introduce you to Katrina. She is the biggest ABBA fan I have ever met. Unfortunately, can't really hear her, but she is singing. So on first take, oops, sorry. Standing doesn't seem like it would be an option for so many reasons for Katrina. She has the most challenging hypertonic dystonia that I've experienced in my career. She is deafblind with a wicked startle reflex and experiences anxiety with position changes and transfers. She has knee and hip flexion contractures. She has wind swept posture to the left and a fixed pelvic obliquity with an accompanying rotoscoliosis. And yet here we are. What did it take? So I took over Katrina's positioning mobility needs in 2018, which was about a year after she'd had bilateral bony hip surgery, and the orthopedic surgeon had cleared her for standing. Despite her limitations in range and ongoing challenges with her tone management, we thought we'd give it a try. Katrina had no other options for fitness and position changes. And I'll admit my initial goals were all around body structure function focus. I was thinking about her tone, opportunity for a long-term stretch, her respiratory function. None of the commercially available standing frames that were available or on the market or available to me at the time would do what I needed them to do. So I fortunately had the opportunity to go with a custom standing frame. So this custom standing frame allowed us the flexibility to accommodate her orthopedic deformities. And we've also been able to adjust it as we go to accommodate her increasing scoliosis and continued challenges with tone management. So I'll admit that the initial introduction of this standing frame when she was in middle school was a struggle. There was so much going on and it was really difficult for us to get the buy-in of her support staff. But when she entered high school about 2 years ago, the community OT and I decided that this would be a really important thing for Katrina. And so we worked really closely with the school team, with her educational assistants and with her resource teacher. And collaboration was really the key to our success. To start with, transfers are really challenging. We needed a large, quiet space because she has the startle reflex, which triggers her tone. And in addition, Katrina is large and heavy. It takes 2 people and a mechanical lift to transfer her. Training was over multiple sessions to help build confidence and efficiency. And ultimately, transfers in the bathroom provided that quiet, large space and also facilitated pairing with her toileting routine to save a transfer. Finally, timing of standing coincides in her day with her tone medications to help decrease her reactivity during the transfer. So, sorry. As we were establishing the routine, the community OT continually checked in with the school team and responded very quickly to feedback. Her educational assistant is quite petite, and so she asked for a handle to help push the standing frame around so that she could get her out of the room where they did the transfer. So we had a handle made and attached. So I'll just... So further collaboration with her team helped to integrate her standing into her school day and to support interaction with her peers. So now that her EA could move her more easily, she goes into the classroom to participate in their cafe program. So here you can see Katrina folding laundry. And then in the other photo, she's washing dishes. So I'd like to actually point out, while you can't see other kids in here, there's actually a lot of hustle and bustle going on. She's in the thick of it. I just didn't have permission to share images of all the other students, so it's a bit strategic in how I took those photos. Now, Roslyn, I'd like to hand it over to you.
So the next few slides, we're going to be talking about the effectiveness of supported standing, and this is based on the quantitative studies, 36 of them, and the 16 systematic reviews. And here, this figure shows the evidence for effectiveness. The charts are divided in 4, with the positive evidence above the line, and risk of bias goes from left to right. So the strongest evidence at the lowest risk of bias is in the upper right corner. That's the shaded area. Now, the diamonds are systematic reviews, and the circles are the primary studies. The darker circles are the group studies, and the lighter studies are the case studies. And you can see that the studies, some of the citations are in bold, and that means that those studies were not included in the previous systematic reviews. Bone mineral density is the outcome that's supported by the highest quality evidence, and quite a bit of evidence. Most studies suggest that weight bearing at least 1 hour and preferably 2 hours is associated with increased bone mineral density, while lower dosages like 30 minutes 2 or 3 times a week may help to maintain. So although this slide doesn't look quite so positive as the previous one, range of motion is actually supported by more studies and more participants, including 3 new group studies. And Thornburg suggests that increased range of motion was found for children who were either standing or using the inner walk for 4 months. Martinson described increased range of motion for children who stood in hip abduction. And Rapson is a feasibility randomized control trial that was really, it's only marked at lower risk of bias because of difficulties with maintaining adherence. And so they had a lot of dropouts. But it was really a very good study. And she measured significant increases in range of motion for the children who stood for 60 minutes in comparison to those who only stood for 30 minutes a day. CPT is a report of a teenager at GMFCS5 with significant hip and knee flexion contractures who was able to begin standing again with adjustable hip and knee components similar to Katrina's story, and he actually gained range of motion over time. And Gibson's study is an older study, but she demonstrated that hamstring length increased during periods of standing, and then they shortened again during periods of withdrawal. So the bottom line is that we can be pretty confident that standing can at the very least help to prevent contractures, and it might actually increase range of motion. Hip stability is a little bit more controversial. Dalen's study suggests that prolonged standing with the feet together can actually increase the rate of hip subluxation. And so this is why children should always be standing in at least some hip abduction. And here the systematic reviews show as being higher quality, but they're actually based only on a couple of low quality primary studies. The theory of standing in more extreme abduction is that it positions the head of the femur into the acetabulum and away from the rim. But this isn't necessarily the case. We found one case study where a child standing in 20 degrees of abduction required a trochanteric brace to keep the hip in the socket. Now, Rapson's recent feasibility RCT demonstrated a trend towards reduced rate of hip displacement for children who were standing at least 40 to 60 minutes a day. So we can say that weight bearing is beneficial, and regular standing in at least 10 to 15 degrees of abduction is associated with a reduced rate of progression. And it might help to delay, but is unlikely to completely prevent the need for surgery, either soft tissue or bony surgery at some point. Now, improved bowel function has only been measured in case studies, and this is quite surprising because I'm sure we've all heard anecdotal reports from children and families about this particular benefit. And parents have recommended that this is an important outcome to measure in future research. Now, most of the studies demonstrate short-term benefits for spasticity while the child is actually in the standing frame or shortly after. But Rapson's feasibility RCT did measure decreased spasticity in hamstrings and hip flexors for 3 children after they were standing consistently for about 12 months. So although the research is limited, if standing makes it easier for the child to dress or transfer, then maybe this is important from a functional perspective. Now, it's pretty much case study evidence where they've measured changes in gross motor function and improved arm and hand control and the ability to self-feed. And parents have reported that it's easier to dress or change their child during periods where they were standing in comparison to times when they were not. Most of the research is limited, but adult studies have found that regular standing is associated with better head control. And only the adults who continue to stand regularly are able to maintain the ability to do a standing transfer. And really, this is one of the most important things for maintaining participation in the community if you can do a standing transfer. So that's an important outcome.
So next, I'm just going to briefly review the lived experience, which is a summary of the qualitative research. So the lived experience data was combined from 5 qualitative studies, 3 case studies, and 6 survey studies. We synthesized the data using a process of coding first-order themes, then labeling them into second-order themes, calculating the frequency and intensity effect sizes of each of the studies, and then finally grouping the information into 3 overarching themes. And those are the themes that are at the top of the table. So down the left side, you can see each of the different studies that contribute to our qualitative analysis, and the gray boxes indicate which of the themes are from that study. And we identified 18 specific themes that were grouped into the 3 broader or key themes. So just for a quick example, on the third theme, you have 16, 17, and 18. So theme 16 is supported standing influences inclusion and participation. Theme 17 is that supported standing may increase independence and functional activity. And 18 is supported standing is an important position change with physical and psychosocial benefits. And that's all lumped in to supported standing provides an important position change and may enhance function and social participation. So I just wanted to quickly review each of the key themes. So as you saw on our table, our first key theme is that supported standing can help to maintain or improve body structure and function and assist with physical management. In the qualitative literature, it was clear that users, parents, caregivers, and therapists all had strong beliefs that standing has physical benefits, even though the research evidence is limited. Supported standing was reported as a relief from pain when the standing frame was set up correctly and specifically for the individual, and a cause of pain when the opposite. One of the things I found really interesting was that when children reported being comfortable in their standing frame, their therapists would perceive good alignment of the children within the standing frame. Our second key theme focuses on success. And success is more likely when matching the child's needs to the device and not the other way around. This requires individualized assessment, prescription, setup, and monitoring. If you think back to Katrina's success story, it really highlights the key considerations for successful implementation of a supported standing program. When choosing and setting up a device, it's important to consider the comfort and alignment of the child, the availability and familiarity of the device, integration of the standing program into the child's daily routine, and the type of transfer, collaboration between the educational staff, parents, therapist, and the young person. And what also came through very clearly in this portion of the literature was that success often follows when the children are given the choice of where and when to stand and for what activities. Our third key theme is the supported standing provides an important position change and may enhance function and social participation. So we need to remember that without collaboration, there is the potential for children to be isolated when in their supported standing devices, especially if we don't take the time to figure out how to integrate the standing into social activities. And we all have examples of these stories from our practice. And finally, standing is acknowledged as an important position change for children who spend much of their day seated. Ginny, on to you.
For the last ISS at Vancouver, we decided to start this project, not knowing what was coming. And so what you're seeing is 2-hour meetings every week for the last 3 years, and we're continue to meet because we're working on the next project. And I'm just so glad and honored that you chose to come here today to listen to what we did. So my part of the talk is about the F words. I've got my F word scarf on, and I'm now a grandma. So that's my grandson. He's 5 months old now. He's 4 months old in that picture. And we are starting early with the F words in my family. So I want to start you on the F words today too. So when we look at the ICF, we all adopted that a long time ago, but it was hard to communicate those things with other professionals, families, teachers, teachers' aides. So we wanted a different vocabulary. And what we love about F words from Peter Rosenbaum and Canchild at McMaster University is that it helps us to make the shift away from body structure and body function. So in my career, we started trying to fix kids. We tried to normalize kids. We did all of our interventions with our hands on children. And we know now that that's not the way to go. All the evidence tells us that doesn't work and that we have to look at the bigger picture. We really have to shift towards participation. And that's why I love these F words. They have things like fitness, functioning, friends, family, fun, and future. So when I'm getting you in a standing device, I'm thinking about all of these things, and especially the future, a future without pain, a future without contractures, a future without deformities, a future with all those great things. So when we looked, and you'll see the infographic that goes with this piece of work. And again, you can contact us if you want the better infographic, because it used to have a lot of words on it and they made us take them away. So there's not so many words left, but I think we'll show it to you at one point. But so we sorted for the F words, and these are the things that we found for fitness. And these are the things we found for functioning. And hopefully you'll notice that it's now functioning. It used to be function, but they changed the word just to make it more active. And you heard Lynore talk about all these wonderful things. And friends, again, that big psychosocial increased eye contact. Those are all the things that we give for friends. We've got all the great stuff for family. You've got to have buy-in. You've got to have families involved in the choices. As Lynore said, when is this going to happen? Where is this going to happen? And the families determine the environment as well. So is the environment conducive to doing all of these things? And then, of course, fun. You have to do something in your standing that you actually want to be doing. You're not just standing in the corner with nothing to do. There's got to be some fun stuff going on, as you saw in Lynore's videos. So here we have future. So again, we talk about what's going to happen in the future. We know that your satellite cells, easy for me to say, stem cells in your muscles, they actually start to go away at 9 months in kids at GMFCS level 4 and 5. When they're not weight bearing, when they're not pulling to standing, cruising, they're gone forever, folks. We're not getting them back. The bone mineral density is already 2 standard deviations from the mean. So this stuff is happening so early, 9 months old. When we walked around the floor, which I know you've all been doing, we were so excited to see standers that are going down to 9 and 12 inch floor to axilla heights. I mean, that's just amazing. So thank you to all our friends who are manufacturing those things and keep up the great work. We saw one today that could literally fold under your arm, and even an old lady like me could carry it around. These are amazing things, because in the end, that's not just going to impact body structure and function, but it's going to help us with all the happy F words. You know me, I love my F words. All right, so this is our infographic. We discovered Canva, and that's a lot of fun. If you don't want to waste some time, that's the place to go. So we just made you this fun little chart. We found and made our own graphics, and we gave you all the fun things. So this is for sharing. You want to make a poster and put it up in your clinic, please do. But these are all free. Just contact us and we'll share them with you. So my case study is called Life is Messy, because we don't all have great stories. I certainly don't have all the great stories, and I want to be real. I want to tell you when it doesn't work for me. So when we started this project, we started collecting stories from families, and I contacted 3 families that I love. And I'm like, tell me how much you love standers. And you know what they told me? How much they hated standers. And what I noticed in 2 of the kids was that they had never started standing until they were 6 and 8 years old. And that was a really big problem. The only kid that's still standing today on a regular basis it was my kid that I started at 9 months. So I think for me, that was a big take-home message, that this has to happen on time. You're hearing that a lot at this conference today, on-time mobility, a big O, a big N, a hyphen, and then a big T. I asked the group that came up with that how they did, and they said alcohol. So it doesn't actually mean anything, but it's a catchy thing. So on time, kids are standing at 9 months, that's when you need to do it. So things with Bauer, who lives in New Orleans, are really messy. And at the APTA Pediatric Conference in Baltimore, also involving alcohol, there's a theme here. We came up with the phrase WTF, and we're saying it's called what the function. So you decide what it really means. But it's sort of questioning when we see things that just make no sense. Like, what did you do that for? And so for Bauer, I really want to point out what the function. So again, born really prematurely. Nobody decided that standing was a good idea until he was around 6. He's a GMFCS level 4. And they did this for a while, and then it all fell apart. The stander at school wasn't working. Nobody would transfer him. He got bigger, and it just got worse and worse and worse. So here he is standing. Wait, the next one, is the video going to run? Say a prayer. There we go. And like we state in our study, is that a lot of families actually prefer a stepping device because they haven't gotten through that hopeful period, and they haven't seen our research where we can now predict who is going to be non-ambulant, who's going to be a GMFCS level 4. I can know that between 3 and 5 months adjusted age. So I can tell you who the kid's going to be that's going to need this stuff at 3 to 5 months adjusted age. But some families can't get there yet. And we find that a lot of families will be more accepting of supported standing when you do it in their stepping device. So here we have a family that's chosen really to do more standing in a stepping device, and they've added some things to try to straighten up and get him in better postural alignment, because as we've shown from our data, the kids are more comfortable when they're when we perceive them being in postural alignment. The best solution that this family has now is the standing wheelchair. I'm around Bauer a lot. I've never ever seen him do this on his own. But last year at Jazz Fest, I was eating my favorite food. I'd waited online for 45 minutes for this mix of shrimp and butter and more butter and a lot of butter. And he pushed that button and got up and he grabbed my food. So I can contest that he can do it when he wants. But he's going to the gym almost every day. There he is. Is that video working in the middle? Going around his house in New Orleans using there we saw the environmental changes. And then the next slide should be Jen Lyman talking to us. Nope, it's his hips. You know, we didn't save his hips. It's really a big message. I'm hearing a lot on the internet, especially Instagram, that if you stand every day, you will save the hips. And I think that's just mean to tell parents that. Bilateral hip bony and soft tissue surgery, which is the surgery that the child at these levels is most likely to have, is rated as the worst surgery by parents. They hate this surgery. Don't use spica casts anymore. That's not indicated. We should use soft stuff. So it shouldn't be as horrible, but it's horrible. And then to put that on the parent that you wouldn't have had to do that if you had been adhered to your program, it's not evidence-based and it's mean. So please don't do that. I have other videos. If you go on my YouTube channel, you can watch Wyatt's mom, who will say she remembers at 9 months me telling her, look, you're going to have scoliosis surgery. You're going to have hip surgery. My goal is that you're just going to need one surgery. The reason we're getting in this standing device every day and we're doing all this postural management is so that you'll only have to go through that nightmare once. Scoliosis surgery is rated by parents as the best surgery they ever had, just so you know. So he had to have hip surgery. And here we have Jen
Variances with
Lyman.
Standards are concerned. You know, I feel like we get it. We understand the benefits of standing. We realize that weight bearing is important. We realize that it provides an extended stretch. We think that it probably helps with circulation and digestion. It certainly helps him with his head control. I think it's been more important from a participation perspective. I think that having him stand up has been really great for him to be able to do things in school in a different position with his peers, and at home, being able to stand up at the kitchen when we're at our island cooking and being able to see and participate alongside the family. I think that part of it has been much, really important for him.
Okay, sorry, but it goes on for about 25 minutes, and it's on my YouTube channel. If you want to access it.
Variances
It's up
with
there.
standards are concerned.
Is it still me? No, right? Oh, great, thanks.
Okay, so and this is based on what we found in the qualitative and the lived experience data. So standards come in different styles. There's prone, supine, upright, sit to stand, mobile, and the choice is influenced by the level of support that the child needs, but also and the ease of transfer, but also what they're going to be doing in the stander. And this might make you think about whether, a tray is important. Is the space important? Does the child need to move or be moved in it? So transfers are probably the biggest influence. You've heard a bit about this. But for upright and prone standers, the child typically needs to either be able to assist by weight bearing, or they need to, at the very least, keep their feet down in the shoe holders during the transfer. And so for this reason, for younger children who might be able to stand fully upright, it might be easier to get them in the stander first and then put them upright. So the space for the use of a stander as well as the transfer is really important, particularly if you need assistance or you need a lifting device. And you need to know if the stander needs to be moved short distances or long distances, like Katrina, and indoors or out, and the different surfaces you're going to go over. Are there thresholds involved, and so on. And in schools, for example, the change space is often in the bathroom because that's where the lift is and that's where the transfer happens. And if they need to be moved a long distance, then you need really good casters. It needs to be easy for the caregiver to push and maneuver. Otherwise, it's not going to be used. And the attitudes of everyone who engages with the child or supports the child while they're in the stander are really influential. In the home environment, it's the parents, and in the school environment, it's the educational staff. And everyone's understandings of the benefits and their abilities to integrate standing into the daily routine are going to be an influence. Therapists, another big influence, whether they're supportive or negative towards standing, and they might be the gatekeeper for funding. The funding environment, of course, is another huge influence, and this varies widely from different locations. But it's important to remember that from a societal perspective, the upright position is still very, very meaningful. Children might be seen or perceived as being more able when they're upright and standing versus in their wheelchair. And standing should never be just for the sake of standing. It should enhance children's participation in family life, help them engage in routines and play with their siblings. And at school, it can be helpful for participating in classes like art or gym, in social situations where being higher to see what's going on is important, like watching sports or concerts. And being eye to eye for communication is the big thing. Standing can help to promote verbal, nonverbal, and augmentative communication and enhance participation with peers. And hopefully, this is going to lead to the F word of friends.
A success story for you. So I'd like to introduce you to Holly. What grade are you in, Holly?
3.
Yeah, can you tell me how long have you been standing for? Did you start standing when you were a little kid?
No, maybe like 1 or 2. Do you like standing?
Not that much.
What don't you like about it?
Like my legs get tired after I stand for so long after
Okay,
when I'm in there
yeah. How often do you use your standing frame?
every morning.
Oh,
Like every morning at home.
okay. What do you do when you're in your standing frame?
Basically use my iPad to keep me busy.
Okay, do you ever do homework or anything like that?
Or
Oh.
do you want?
You really? Okay. Do you ever do anything with your family when you're in your standing frame?
Probably watch a show.
Okay.
Sometimes I help cook.
Oh, that's good.
Sometimes I babysit Ginny,
Okay.
my little brother in my stander.
Oh, okay. So what does Jamie do when you're in your stander?
Well, technically, he colors books that are.
Yeah. And how do you think your standing frame helps you?
It helps me stand,
Okay.
and it helps me with anything really.
Okay. And how long do you stand every day?
Until probably 8.
8 in the morning?
Yeah.
And when do you get into it?
After I go use the bathroom, I get into it
Okay.
because my school starts at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. Is there anything you want to tell me about standing?
No.
Okay, well, thanks for doing the interview.
Actually, she uses that word a lot. It's really funny. So family has been the key to Holly's supported standing success. Right from the get-go, her parents were game to get Holly standing for an hour a day. For this family, this was and still is, as you heard from Holly, first thing in the morning. As she told us, after toileting and getting dressed, she gets into her stander. When she was little, Holly's twin brother was a little bit jealous of Holly's equipment. And sometimes when Holly resisted standing, Hugh would want to get in first. There'd be a little bit of sibling rivalry and a "no, it's mine" would come into play. And then Holly would get in for her hour. And then Hugh would get his turn afterwards for about 5 minutes. So here, Holly and Hugh are both standing as they play video games together. And you can see the baby Jamie is getting in the fun in his own way. So initially, Holly was in a supine stander with a large tray, and ultimately she moved into an upright stander as she got bigger, as this worked better for transfers and also fits into their home. So this stander provides her with the support that she needs for comfort and alignment, and it has the adjustability needed to accommodate for her growth. Being fully upright is best for Holly's participation in her family's activities. I also wanted to highlight one of the things Holly said about being up in her stander. She said her legs got tired. So one of the things that came through in the research is that actually supported standing is fitness. It's like exercise or activity for kids in these higher levels, GMFCS levels. So this is an opportunity for Holly for fitness. So for Holly, standing affords her an opportunity to engage with her family, daily fitness, fun with her siblings, and we're also supporting her future health as we are reminded of all those body structure and function benefits of supporting her hip health, bone mineral density, and helping to maintain her range of motion. Ginny, this one's you.
Novak. You guys know her? She's from Australia. She's amazing. So she does these bubble charts with the systematic reviews, and everything we do in our practice as PT and OTs and speech therapists are supposed to be above the worth it line. So if you're trying to find out if you're doing an updated practice or if you're doing stuff that we shouldn't do anymore, you look to Iona Novak. So this is one of her latest PhD students. McNamara that's just come out with this hot off the press. It's 2022. And oh my gosh, for the first time, standing programs have made it green. I'm excited. No? Okay.
To do at this point in the presentation is open up the floor to questions and have a bit of a conversation. So we've put some comments up there talking about reasonable expectations for what you can expect in supported standing, and just wondering if there's anything that anybody would like to ask us.
I think I got this thing. Oh, to them. Yeah, great idea. Cool. Thanks.
We're not all coming in for a hug.
No, oh man.
Sorry to make you. I just have a question. The first girl you showed in the custom built sander, is that something you personally built or like through like how?
Have we
Canada's
no.
different.
So one of my local the team that I work on, I have 4 technicians and a rehab engineer, and then we also have some private companies with similar setup. And so it was through a private company that I had it made. So I think there's actually some products on the market now that would do what this standard does.
And that's in the Capeti case story. So it's case study. So if you go look at Capeti in the literature, you'll see how they did it.
So, and sometimes there are things available, but you just can't necessarily get them in Canada. We can't get all the same stuff that you guys can get down here. And also cost, depending on where you're living, is different. So something that in the States might cost $5,000 or $6,000 will cost me like $10,000 in Canada. So for us, it was also more economical to make this custom standing frame rather than going with purchasing something commercially available.
And one thing we've really tried hard today is to show you a range of products, lots of brands. This is not a commercial session. You know, we're not plugging one brand or another. So we're just trying to show you all those different options. You can start by shouting.
So I wondered what kind of support you gave her for lying to kind of work in conjunction with your goal of getting her standing.
Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't been able to implement any support during sleep. Are you meaning in the supine standard or when she's in bed?
I meant when she's in bed.
Yeah, when
so
she's
that
in
you can
bed.
have more hours.
Yeah, that has unfortunately not been possible to date due to some social stuff that I'm being very cryptic about. But
If you want to chat later.
yeah, we can
fine.
talk later about that.
Study on that. So Roz and I have our health study from 2022. It's not open access. You'll have to email it for full text. What journal is it in, Roz?
Oh, she might be frozen.
She knows everything. I don't know anything. But we have all like the guidelines that include lying, sitting, standing, all the things you're going on to do to preserve hip health in this. So if you're looking for the evidence and like what can be said about those things, I think that's a good resource.
Awesome.
So
Thank you.
that was the goal. Sort of over COVID, we've published 6 articles that are just on 4s and 5s. And we think that these are the first articles that ever been published on this population. And it came from a place of trying to publish an original article that nobody would take because they said we didn't have the evidence to support it. So then in true fashion, we just made it up and made up all that evidence. And now we can go back and publish that other stuff.
Roz, you're unfrozen now. Can you tell us what article it was that you published?
The hip health one?
Hip health one?
Are you talking the hip health one?
Yeah.
It's in physical medicine and rehabilitation. Anyway, if you go on ResearchGate on either Ginny or I's profile, you would be able to find it there. And it's not open access. So you actually, yeah, probably the easiest thing is to email one of us and we can share.
An online copy with you is what she was going to say. Yeah.
Are you using that terminology instead of a gait trainer, or are they interchangeable?
Thanks for noticing. Yeah, so originally when Roz and I did our first review on that evidence, I insisted that we use the word gait trainer because in the United States, that was the code that we billed under. Roz didn't. And it turned out, of course, as always, Roz was right. So we've switched now to supported stepping device. And you'll see, I think we have a series of 3 articles on that now, the new scoping review that just came out. And then you'll see some other articles coming out soon. And we did that purposely because we're got a lot of pushback, especially from Iona Novak and the Australians, that 4s and 5s did not deserve those devices because they were never going to walk. So when you call it a gait trainer, it's as if you're training gait. We can do that lecture for you next time we're all together, if you like, to show us the review that we did on the stepping devices, but there were 2 distinct patterns. There was a pattern mostly in the United States of people putting very young children in the devices, but they walked away. They were really GMFCS level 2s and 3s and they walked out of it, versus the pattern we saw in the UK where they use it much later. It's a last resort. They've given up on walking. Everybody's sad. And they put them in those devices at that point. And so what we're really hoping by publishing all this evidence is to change the terminology and change the expectation that we're just looking for activity and participation, engagement, all the F words. What did I miss, Roz?
My internet's kind of unstable all of a
sorry.
sudden, so.
But we'll put that in as an abstract next time. Oh, and the new study that's about to come out, first time ever that anyone's ever been able to show that when power mobility was introduced to these very young children at GMFCS level 4 and 5, it did not decrease the time they spent in their stepping or their standing device. So that should be out any day now. We're working hard. We had nothing to do over COVID. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, 1 second.
Hi, Ginny. I work over at HMS school.
You do,
And
yes,
I do. I know, I keep trying to find you, but so we use a lot of sit to stand products that can't get into that abduction for the bigger kids. And it's for us to be able to use the patient lifts to get them out of the seated position into the seated position, secured and then up. So we kind of trade off the abduction for still the ability to get up and down.
I'll let Lynore answer as well. I don't mind that you're trading for abduction because once everything's finished growing, you'll only have an effect on the muscles and not the bone. So it's still important to be a little abducted. The thing I don't like the most about sit to stand and why I don't really use them is because you're limited. So if you look at the Capeti study, if we had put that kid in a sit to stand, we never would have gotten past 40 degrees of hip and knee flexion because one of the joints was stuck there. But in that study, we actually get a full 40 degrees. I'm not going to get the right joint. I think it was the hip back to 0. And you can only do that in a stander where all 4 joints are independent. And you don't have that in a sit to stand. And before this article that Lynore did, we used to say the best stander is the one you have. If you're using it, that's the best stander. But we've changed now based on the evidence to say, no, you have to match the device with the kid to have the best success.
Yeah, and then if that's the best device that works for that child, I mean, I do have some kids that use the sit to stand product because of all those other considerations that we needed to look at around transfers and comfort. One of my kids super anxious with being that supine and then going into upright. It's so weird. If you haven't done it before, you should try it out because it is weird. But we could actually get him to buy into being transferred into a sit to stand product. And then he had the control of actually getting into standing because he has knee flexion contractures and freaks out when people try to straighten his legs and that kind of thing. So I think what we tried to do here is show all of those different factors that go into play. I think the key thing though is not trying to make a device work for a child just because that's what you have. It's really assessing the kid, figuring out what the needs are, and then looking at what products are available and trying out, seeing what's actually going to work best for that kid.
And there's a couple of standards on the market that I call a strap-on stander to keep you awake. I know it's inappropriate, but you slide like the sling under their butt without having to lift them. You hook it on and then they pump it up. And you can do that as a 4 and a 5. Like even if you have a bad scoli, there's things you can do to use those.
Yeah.
I had a follow-up question to the gait trainer question. I'm sorry. Hi. I had a follow-up to the gait trainer question. We are having
Nice question.
particular issues with funding of standers in Pittsburgh right now, over the past 2 years. And one of the reasons is the child also has a gait trainer. So are you seeing that? And even for the ones who don't have a gait trainer, we're seeing lots of, this isn't medically necessary. You wanted a multi-positional stander, but you need a supine stander, but they're not going to pay for a supine stander either. It's a lot of runaround.
So you've got to talk to your friends at NCART, at CTF, because I promised I wouldn't curse, so I won't, but that's Boulder Dash. Like, we can't allow that to happen. That's not right. Just because they don't want to pay, they have to. That's their job. The guy that makes the money at that corporation has a $5,000 shower rod. Sorry, you can't have that. You need to give me more standards. So we just need to keep fighting and saying, we've got the evidence, we've proved this. But that was the journey that I tried to share. The first article we wrote was trying to say why both were medically necessary. The difference between prolonged stretch in a stander and mobility in a stepping device. And if you see the latest article, Roz and I just published the scoping review on stepping devices, 738 kids, Roz?
705.
A lot of kids age 9 months to 47 years.
Yep.
Are using stepping devices successfully. So, you know, they'll say you can't get it if you're a GMFCS level 5. And again, am I allowed to say Boulder Dash, Wendy? Is that allowed? Okay. I'm trying. And so, you know, the F words just come naturally. So we're working on that for you. And that's really been our whole motivation. We tried to publish it with Pediatric Physical Therapy Journal, and we tried 3 times and it was just awful. So we're gonna keep trying, we promise.
So now you've got your scope.
The thing you can help is publish your case studies, because I think by what Roz and Lynore are trying to taught me is that the evidence is still so low. It's still so in its infancy that anytime you publish a case study, it matters.
Yeah, so you've got your scoping review on supported stepping, you've got your scoping review on supported standing. So you can really go to your funders with the evidence that is out there to support funding these devices.
And the next one coming out again, hopefully next month, is a scoping review on all of the early interventions for the 4s and 5s. And the number 1 recommendation is parent education, formal. And the number 2 recommendation is more assistive technology, especially for low and moderate resource areas.
Yeah. There was another, hi.
So my biggest question with 4s and 5s that we face, especially for the suggestion of the longer periods of time, is head control. And a lot of our kids do not tolerate hen singers for that long or that positioning. So what suggestions do you guys have for looking specifically at or head control or endurance with head control in looking towards these recommendations?
And staple guns are frowned upon, right? What do you recommend, my clinical friends? You got to yell so they can hear you.
It's a challenge. Heads are a problem. I say that to parents all the time. Heads are a problem. I could just take a ponytail and pull it back. There are some interesting products out there that do, I hate forehead straps, but sometimes, again, it depends on the kid. Sometimes I'll start, you know, you're not going to get them bowled upright right away, right? And for Katrina, for example, when they were getting her in, they were getting her bowled upright right away. And they're like, oh my gosh, she's getting all this bruising from her AFOs. And you see her head was awful. Her head is always awful. I've just accepted it. We've tried every headrest in the market. But like for her, it was like, well, actually she needs to be about 15, 20 degrees recline because her feet also have, because of her knee and hip flexion contractures, her toes, when she was fully upright, her toes were kind of sliding down and stuff. So she's putting a lot of pressure on. So I guess what I'm saying is you play around with it. And while ideally it would be fantastic if they could all be fully upright, because then you're going to get all the, you know, the benefits of really weight bearing through those joints and the bone mineral density and stuff. But that's not the reality that we live in with these kids. It's all about accommodating, playing around with it. But maybe if you start at minus 30 degrees and then just kind of gradually build it up, play around with some different headrest products that are out there, different colors. Yeah, heads are a problem.